Most overrated smartphones. Have you ever bought something that everyone else seemed to love, only to realize later that it wasn't nearly as amazing as people claimed? Maybe it was a movie that received perfect reviews but turned out to be boring. Maybe it was a restaurant everyone recommended but served average food. Or maybe it was a smartphone. Because in the world of technology, hype is one of the most powerful forces on Earth. Every year, millions of people rush to buy the newest devices. Tech influencers praise them. Advertisements promise revolutionary features. Companies spend billions convincing consumers that this year's phone will change everything. But what if some of the most popular smartphones aren't actually the best smartphones? What if some devices have become famous not because they're exceptional, but because they're marketed exceptionally well? And perhaps most importantly, how many people are paying flagship prices for features they never use? Today, we're diving into the most overrated smartphones in the world. Not necessarily the worst phones. Not the cheapest phones. Not even bad phones. We're talking about devices that receive far more praise than they deserve. Some of the names on this list might surprise you. Some might even upset a few viewers. But by the end of this video, you'll see smartphones very differently. And one particular phone near the end perfectly demonstrates why marketing often beats reality. Let's begin. To understand overrated smartphones, we first need to understand something important. An overrated phone isn't automatically a bad phone. That's a mistake many people make. A bad phone fails to deliver. An overrated phone delivers, but not to the level people claim. Imagine paying twice as much for a luxury car that's only slightly better than a regular one. The luxury car isn't bad. The value simply doesn't match the hype. And nowhere is this phenomenon more obvious than in the smartphone industry. For years, manufacturers have mastered the art of making tiny improvements feel revolutionary. A slightly brighter display becomes a next-generation visual experience. A slightly faster processor becomes a game-changing breakthrough. A camera improvement that most people can't even notice suddenly becomes the headline feature of an entire launch event. And consumers keep buying. But why? The answer lies in psychology. People don't just buy smartphones. They buy status. They buy identity. They buy belonging. Sometimes they're purchasing a feeling more than a product. And that brings us to one of the biggest examples of smartphone hype ever created. The annual flagship upgrade cycle. Every year, millions of people replace perfectly functional devices. Not because their old phones stopped working. Not because they desperately need new features. But because a newer version exists. Think about that. Many modern smartphones are so powerful that most users never come close to utilizing their full capabilities. Yet advertisements convince people that last year's flagship is somehow outdated. The reality is far different. In many cases, the average user could keep a premium smartphone for 4, 5, or even 6 years without major problems. But the industry depends on constant upgrades. Which leads us to our first major category of overrated devices. Ultra-premium flagship phones. These are the smartphones that often cost over $1,000. Some even approach laptop prices. And while they're undoubtedly impressive, the question is whether they're impressively better than alternatives. Take a moment and consider this. If someone handed you 2 smartphones without logos, would you really notice a $1,000 difference during everyday use? For most people, the answer is no. Social media apps would load instantly on both. Videos would play smoothly on both. Messages would send instantly on both. Photos would look excellent on both. Yet one device might cost hundreds more. Why? Because flagship phones increasingly compete in areas where average users rarely benefit. Manufacturers have entered what many experts call the specification race. More megapixels, more zoom, more AI features, more processing power, more everything. The problem is that more doesn't always mean better. And sometimes it doesn't even mean noticeable. One of the most fascinating examples comes from smartphone cameras. For years, companies promoted higher megapixel counts as proof of superior photography. Consumers believed bigger numbers automatically meant better pictures. But photography doesn't work that way. Sensor quality, image processing, lens design, lighting conditions, all matter far more than megapixels alone. Yet marketing campaigns successfully turned a technical number into a selling point. Millions bought into the hype. And that's where smartphone overrating truly begins. When perception becomes more important than practical reality. But cameras aren't the only area where hype thrives. Battery charging has become another battlefield. Companies compete to offer incredibly fast charging speeds. 30 minutes, 20 minutes, sometimes even less. At first glance, it sounds revolutionary. But ask yourself this: how often do you genuinely need to charge your phone from 0 to 100% in 15 minutes? For many people, the answer is almost never. It's impressive technology. But impressive technology isn't always meaningful technology. And that distinction matters. Because smartphone companies know something very important. Consumers are attracted to numbers. Bigger numbers feel like progress, even when real-world benefits are minimal. Yet all of this pales compared to one particular trend that exploded across the industry: foldable smartphones. When foldables first appeared, they looked like the future. Flexible displays, futuristic designs, phones transforming into tablets. It felt like science fiction becoming reality. And to be fair, the engineering behind foldables is remarkable. But here's the uncomfortable question: are they solving a problem that most people actually have? Or are they creating a solution in search of a problem? For years, manufacturers presented foldables as the next evolution of smartphones, the future of mobile technology, the inevitable replacement for traditional devices. Yet years later, foldables remain a niche product. Why? Because while they're undeniably cool, they're not necessarily practical for everyone. They're often more expensive, more fragile, heavier, and in many cases, less convenient. That's the hallmark of an overrated technology. People admire it, people talk about it, but relatively few people truly need it. And this leads to one of the most surprising realities in modern technology. Sometimes the best smartphone isn't the most advanced one. Sometimes it's the one that disappears into your daily life and simply works. No drama, no gimmicks, no marketing buzzwords, just reliability. But smartphone companies rarely advertise reliability because reliability isn't exciting. Excitement sells. And nowhere is excitement manufactured more effectively than during launch events. Think about the average smartphone presentation. Dramatic music, massive screens, bold claims, words like revolutionary, groundbreaking, and transformative. Every launch sounds like a historic technological milestone. Yet if you compare many flagship phones released 5 years apart, you'll notice something interesting. The differences are often smaller than the marketing suggests. Yes, improvements exist. Displays are better. Processors are faster. Cameras are stronger. But the smartphone revolution largely happened years ago. What we're seeing now is refinement, not reinvention. And that's an important distinction. Because when an industry matures, genuine breakthroughs become rare. Companies still need excitement, so they create excitement around smaller and smaller improvements. This isn't unique to smartphones. It happens throughout technology. But smartphones may be the clearest example. And now we arrive at one of the biggest overrated concepts in the entire industry: brand loyalty. Some consumers defend smartphone brands with almost sports team level passion. They argue online. They attack competitors. They treat purchasing decisions like personal identities. But here's the truth: no company consistently makes the perfect phone. Every brand has strengths. Every brand has weaknesses. Yet many consumers become emotionally attached to logos rather than products. This emotional attachment allows certain devices to receive praise they haven't fully earned. A flaw that would be criticized on one brand gets ignored on another. A missing feature becomes intentional design. A limitation becomes part of the experience. Marketing and loyalty combine into a powerful force, and suddenly objective evaluation becomes difficult. This brings us to perhaps the most important turning point in our story: the realization that smartphone value and smartphone popularity are not the same thing. A popular phone isn't automatically the best phone. A best-selling phone isn't automatically the smartest purchase. Sometimes the most praised device offers the least value. And sometimes the phone receiving little attention delivers the best overall experience. This is where many consumers make expensive mistakes. They focus on what everyone else is buying, instead of focusing on what they actually need. A professional photographer may genuinely benefit from advanced camera systems. A mobile gamer may need maximum performance. A content creator may use specialized features daily. But average users, many use their phones for messaging, videos, social media, navigation, and photos. Tasks that even mid-range devices handle remarkably well. That's why some budget and mid-range smartphones have become such incredible value propositions. They expose a truth the industry would rather not emphasize. The gap between good and great has become much smaller than the gap between affordable and expensive. In other words, spending twice as much rarely delivers twice the experience. And that single fact explains why so many flagship devices become overrated. Not because they're bad, because expectations have become disconnected from reality. So what can consumers learn from all of this? First, ignore hype whenever possible. Marketing exists to create desire, not objectivity. Second, identify your actual needs, not imagined needs, not future needs, real daily needs. Third, understand that specifications don't automatically translate into better experiences. And finally, remember that technology should serve you. You shouldn't serve technology. The best smartphone is not the most expensive one. It's not the newest one. It's not the one with the biggest camera bump or the most impressive presentation. It's the phone that delivers the right balance of performance, reliability, features, and value for your specific life. And that's a lesson worth remembering every time a new device launches. Because next year, another smartphone will arrive. Another presentation will promise the future. Another wave of excitement will sweep across the internet. And millions of people will once again wonder whether they need an upgrade. Some will. Many won't. The challenge is knowing the difference. At the end of the day, the most overrated smartphones aren't necessarily tied to a specific brand or model. They're any phones whose reputation grows larger than their actual value. Their devices elevated by marketing, trends, and assumptions rather than practical benefits. And once you learn to recognize that pattern, you'll never look at smartphone launches the same way again. The next time a company claims they've reinvented the smartphone, ask yourself a simple question. Is this truly revolutionary? Or is it simply another chapter in the endless cycle of hype? That single question could save you hundreds, maybe even thousands of dollars. And more importantly, it could help you make smarter technology decisions for years to come. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications because we're diving deeper into the hidden realities of technology, consumer psychology, and the products millions of people buy without questioning. And before you go, tell us in the comments, which smartphone do you think is the most overrated of all time? The answers might be more surprising than this video itself.